So as we are gearing up for the NFL draft here on ABC 10 this week, it is time to welcome in our Locked On 49ers friend of the family here, Brian Peacock, joining us to talk a little San Francisco 49ers football. And Brian, for people who might not know about you or the Locked On Podcast Network, can you tell us what it's all about, what you do, and where they can find you?
Yeah, it's everywhere you find podcasts. You can find my show, Locked On 49ers. I also do a national show with a former NFL scout, Matt Williamson, called the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. And we're coming at you daily. That's what the Locked On Podcast Network is all about. Daily content for your team. Everybody's team out there is covered. NFL, NHL, Major League Baseball. We've got college folks on the network. So everything is covered. It's daily content, and it's blowing up, and it's been so much fun to be a part of. And it's fun to be a part of this with you guys as well.
Yeah, we're thrilled to have you. I know we do already a little bit of a weekly chat with Matt George for the Sacramento Kings up in our area. So we're familiar a little bit with how the Locked On works. But I wanted to ask you, I mean, with the 49ers, I can't imagine how much attention you're getting right now. It seems like with the NFL draft just days away, and of course you can see it here on ABC 10, but if you do this every single day, I don't know how you're not beating your head against the wall with all the attention the 49ers are receiving right now.
It's insane. With it's probably, I don't want to overstate it, but this is a historical moment for the San Francisco 49ers. So the draft stuff normally is just odd and weird and fun. And this year there's just an extra element with the 49ers trading up to number 3. And it's such a huge moment for this franchise's history. And you probably got to go back to at least the Alex Smith, Aaron Rodgers draft 2005, right? And so 49ers fans are hoping that they get it right this time and they draft that Hall of Fame caliber player at number 3, and everybody in the world knows they're going quarterback. Which quarterback is it is the question. And so the NFL never sleeps. There's always content every day, and we go all off season long, but this period of time, you want the draft to get here, but I also kind of want to slow down and take it all in because of the impactful moment this is for the 49ers franchise.
Yeah, and Sean and I were actually talking offline before we caught up with you, Brian. And is it hyperbole to say that this is a franchise-defining move, a career-defining moment for Kyle Shanahan, and obviously putting a lot of faith in this rookie class of quarterbacks? Obviously, you've got Jimmy Garoppolo there and the history of injuries that he's had to navigate with Nick Mullins and CJ Beathard under center. But how would you characterize this moment for Kyle Shanahan and the franchise and everything that they got riding going into Thursday?
It's massive. No, I think you have to say it like it is. And they had the guts to make a move like this, but it's 3 first-round draft picks in the end, so they don't pick again in the first round until 2024. And if they don't get this pick right, I don't think it's going to be Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch making that selection in 2024. That's how big of a moment this is for their careers. And they obviously saw the opportunity picking near the top 10 to move up and get their guy. And if it's the right guy, then nobody will remember how much it cost to trade up to get him, and everyone will be excited. And Kyle Shanahan will go on, I'm sure, and win Super Bowls, finally get that Super Bowl win, right? And that's the goal here. He wants one of those top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. But if they get it wrong, then this is a career-defining move, and he will be labeled as somebody who couldn't pick the right guy, who couldn't develop his own quarterback because he's inherited a lot of quarterbacks in his NFL career. And John Lynch, obviously, this is his first job as a GM, and he might be a broadcaster again for the rest of his career if this doesn't go right. So it's absolutely a massive moment career-wise for the people in charge in San Francisco, and 49ers fans are just holding their breath out there and hoping it's the right pick on Thursday.
I wonder if you go into this much like myself, which, I grew up a 49ers fan. So I have that whole dynamic where it's like, all right, there's picking with my head and then there's picking with my heart. And I think a lot of 49ers right now feel pretty conflicted about their pick and the way it might be rounding out here with number 3. How do you go into this? I mean, is there a player that you think they're going to take, and who would you like them to take?
Yes. And judging by the fan base reaction so far to most of the rumors that are happening, most fans do not want Mac Jones out of Alabama to be the pick, but I think that is going to be the pick. And there is sort of a coach's eye for the draft, and then there's a scout's eye for the draft. And I think a lot of people look at it from the scout's eye, and they want that high upside player, the high end talent, the big time arm talent, the athleticism that players like Justin Fields from Ohio State and Trey Lance from North Dakota State have. And it's tantalizing. And we've seen some really great players in the NFL recently develop that have that kind of high-end talent. Last year, it was Justin Herbert looking amazing, better than the Alabama quarterback Tua Tagovailoa that was a pick right in front of him last year. Josh Allen has developed and really put the hammer down on the 49ers this last season. And we've seen, Kyle Shanahan has seen a guy twice a year since he's been the coach with the 49ers in Seattle and Russell Wilson. And that type of player with the athleticism to extend plays and throw darts down the field and make teams cover every inch of grass on the field and make plays down the field, I would assume would be intriguing. But I've always thought, ever since I first started watching Mac Jones with an eye on the draft, that looks like a Shanahan guy, and I would not be surprised if he liked him. But that's what I thought, that maybe they could get Mac Jones with their second pick, number 43 overall. And 12 felt a little high. Trading up 3 first-round picks to number 3 to draft Mac Jones, I kind of agree with most of the fan base there. That feels high. That feels excessive and feels unnecessary to go up and get a player that might not have the upside of the other two guys. So it's going to be fascinating to see what the 49ers do, but it feels right now like they are leaning toward Mac Jones.
And of course, it's hard to kind of predict the Hall of Fame career when you're coming out of college or wherever. But do you see that potential in Mac Jones to be that guy, to be even a starter in place of Jimmy Garoppolo this season? Obviously, he will be Kyle Shanahan's pick. And so I'm sure he'll get a little bit more grace and attention maybe when it comes to stepping into this role. But do you see a potential Hall of Famer in any of these top quarterbacks that could be selected at number 3?
Yeah. And so when Kyle Shanahan, right after the trade, they held a press conference talking about why they made the move. And Kyle Shanahan said he wanted to have a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. And it's so much easier to win when you have that type of player. And as soon as they made the trade and he was talking like that, I thought, okay. And all the stuff I laid out there about what's been going on recently in the NFL and how things are sort of changing with quarterbacks. It was Justin Fields. I was like, oh, it's Justin Fields. They're going to get the guy. He coached him at a QB collective camp when Fields was in high school. So he knows the kid. I thought, oh, he's known him for years. That's going to be his guy. He wants the high upside player, maybe sit behind Garoppolo for a year and develop him. And then he's got that high end talent like we've seen so many other teams have that I just named. But now we see that Kyle Shanahan's true colors come in and he wants a guy that he knows he can trust and is going to get the ball out on time and get the ball out quickly. And I don't think the player he described is Mac Jones. I don't see that high-end talent. I don't see Mac Jones' realistic ceiling being somebody that's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. I think he can be very good. I think he can be similar to what we've seen with Jimmy Garoppolo and probably be a healthier version of that. And he throws a nice deep ball. He doesn't have a cannon arm, but he can get the ball down the field a little bit. So maybe that will play up and he'll have seasons where he could be a top 10 quarterback in the league. But when you're talking about projecting physically, comparing him to guys like Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson and some of the best quarterbacks we've seen, you are really banking on him being so efficient and being a surgeon out there on the field. And it's so hard to project a player to be the next Drew Brees, who, by the way, wasn't a first-round pick, or Tom Brady, who, by the way, was a 6th-round pick, right? And those guys were drafted 20 years ago. So it's really hard to project somebody to be an outlier of outliers like Tom Brady. And some people want to put him in that bucket. And even Matt Ryan, who Kyle Shanahan had a ton of success with in Atlanta. I think Matt Ryan was a better prospect coming out of college than Mac Jones is right now, just physically and arm talent wise. So it's hard for me at Mac Jones' realistic ceiling to see somebody who's going to play at that level, which is really why fans right now are worried that he might be the pick, because they think they might just have more of the same that they already have with Jimmy Garoppolo.
You both can tell me if I'm off base here, because I haven't married myself to anybody yet. And I know we're just 2 days away from this draft. And I still don't know. I think it could be a little bit of a crapshoot in terms of, I'm not even sure that they're going to even draft at 3. I mean, I'm almost predicting some funky stuff going on, but if we just keep it at 3, the one thing that I just shoots off the page to me with Mac Jones, you mentioned it a second ago, how fast he can release the ball, and also how just unbelievably accurate he is. And I think those are 2 attributes that Kyle Shanahan looks at and salivates over compared to the quarterbacks he's had of late. And if I'm John Lynch and I'm giving him control of this pick and he's finally getting his guy, I'm almost of the belief of, in Kyle Shanahan we trust. Go get your guy that you want. But I will say this. if you go after Mac Jones, you better be ready to hold on to Jimmy Garoppolo, not only for 1 year, but possibly 2. And Brian, I don't know if you agree with that, because I don't see him being a guy that can step in right away. I do see that with someone like Fields and someone like Trevor Lawrence, obviously. I think those 2 quarterbacks are the most NFL ready players right now. So if you want to replace Jimmy Garoppolo this year, to me, it's Fields. And if you move down to get Fields or whatever that looks, go ahead and do it.
Yeah, it's interesting with Fields because I think people point to him not getting the ball out as quickly and think he needs time or maybe needs to sit. But I think with an athletic quarterback, you can put in a playbook, you can put in a scheme that can allow him to use his athleticism and play really early and play well early. And I think he's a better prospect and a better passer than Robert Griffin was when they drafted him, the Shanahans, when Kyle was his dad's offensive coordinator in Washington in 2012. And he had a fantastic rookie season under Kyle Shanahan. I think Justin Fields is better than that. And I think he could put that together and be dynamic on offense. And it would actually help the running game quite a bit too, not just quarterback runs, but it would give, make an extra man on defense be focusing on the quarterback who can run, which would open up things for everybody else. So I agree with you there. I think Justin Fields could absolutely play early. I think Mac Jones could probably play pretty early as well, but he doesn't have, I think he had 10 snaps maybe in college in his career under center. So, it's going to take some time, I think, with all these quarterbacks. And that's the idea with Jimmy Garoppolo. If he still is on the roster after this weekend, we'll find out, or alive after this weekend. If you heard the press conference Monday from Kyle Shanahan, was one of the strangest things I've ever heard. Maybe really that, and maybe kind of introspective. It's like, oh man, yeah, none of us could be here Sunday. That's true, Kyle, and kind of got me depressed for a minute. But Mac Jones could play early, but and I don't think there's that much of a market for Jimmy Garoppolo, even if they wanted to trade him. And they'll probably be asking for quite a bit. New England went and got Cam. The Chicago Bears went and got Andy Dalton. Maybe the Denver Broncos I could see being a fit, but they might be able to snag their own quarterback at pick number 9 if that's the direction they want to go. So I think all of these guys, it would benefit them to sit a little bit. But when you draft a player number 3, as soon as Jimmy Garoppolo trots out there and has a bad game or throws an interception, people are going to go crazy. Every media member is going to be asking him about it after every practice, every media availability, every game. And most times when you draft a quarterback that early, they play early. Now, the 49ers are built to win a little bit more right now than some teams that are usually drafting 3 overall. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic, and it's going to be, I think, a lot of pressure on the coach, the GM, and Jimmy Garoppolo if he's around and he's starting, and the rookie too. And you don't want to put any extra pressure on a rookie because there's already enough there. And if the fan base thinks you were a bad pick and you come out in your first preseason game and don't look amazing, I mean, that could start to spiral a little bit. So it's just fascinating, all the dynamics that are at play with this, and really such hubris by Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch to make this type of move and make it as early as they did, so all of us could be talking about it for so long. If it happened on the clock, it'd be like, boom, there's the pick. Okay, there's the guy. But leaving it out there and leaving the fan base to hang and argue and make photoshops of their favorite player in a 49ers uniform, right? People have picked sides already. So this is fascinating. And I think maybe Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, as aggressive as they are, it's their nature, might have overlooked how much pressure and how much outside forces do exist. And that's why the old saying is, when you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none, because it makes everybody's job easier when every press conference is about that every single time. And I envision it being that way. So everyone's going to have to be pretty tough-minded about this whole situation. But in the end, if they get the right quarterback and he plays well, everything's going to be gravy. But if he doesn't draft the right quarterback, and it has to be the best quarterback too, that's the thing. Out of the 3 quarterbacks out there, they've got to pick the right one, and he's got to be better than the other 2. And that's kind of a tough ask, because we know how much of a crapshoot the NFL draft can be.
Absolutely. And you talk about the hubris. In that Monday media availability, you could hear John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan really trying to temper the fans and their enthusiasm, or their, disappointment in the interest, of the level of interest that it seems to be in Mac Jones. And they were very vague, obviously, not giving away who they're exactly looking at or who they're most interested in. But, they don't seem to acknowledge the pressure. They know it's there. They know that they are really the talk of the NFL draft. I really haven't heard much from any other team in terms of anticipation or what this could mean for the franchise as a whole. I mean, obviously, if you're picking number one, you need some help. And if you're going to get Trevor Lawrence, then that's great. But outside of that, we do know that all eyes are on the 49ers with this pick and what it becomes. And they did make a good point that, it's a little less pressure for a rookie going at 3 because he's not going to necessarily a bad team, right? We saw how the rash of injuries last year, the pandemic, and having to move to Arizona, and all of those factored into a disappointing season that they were hoping to run it back and do the revenge tour and all of that. That obviously did not happen. But you're stepping into a system and a program that's had success in recent years. So you don't have that, buildup of pressure and expectation lying completely on your shoulders. But we do look at Jimmy Garoppolo and whether or not he will be in a 49ers uniform come Sunday or come September. What is your confidence level that they are able to keep him around, and whether that's as a backup role even? Do you see him sticking around with this number 3 quarterback coming in?
That's tough. And that was one of the things I thought about during that press conference this week with Kyle Shanahan talking about how badly he needed to get a starter. And I was thinking, well, they kind of have a starter, right? How does Jimmy Garoppolo feel about all of this? He can't like it. And maybe he'll have a chip on his shoulder and that'll make him even better, which will make the team better if he is around. But I think the 49ers want to win now. So I do somewhat believe when they say that they like Jimmy G and they want to have him around, because they will probably take a step back no matter which quarterback they draft, because rarely is a guy ready to go that early. And they think they have a Super Bowl roster and they want to go win now. So I would understand why they would want to bring Jimmy Garoppolo back and have him start the year. And then, we'll see where the rookie is, and whenever he's ready to go, he's got to play, because you put that many resources into a player. Like, that's the future. They've already made the decision to move on from Jimmy Garoppolo. Now the question is when. And if a team comes calling during the draft, I think with the right amount of picks or the higher pick that they're looking for, I think they would trade him. I don't know if they're going to get that offer. So I think we're going to see Jimmy Garoppolo as the starter for the 49ers in week 1. And if he gets hurt or plays bad, it could be a quick switch to whoever they draft at number 3.
And I wonder too, just knowing your history, right? You've got a few drafts now under the belt for John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan here. And when you look at past first rounds before, now granted, you could argue that those aren't at the magnitude that this one is, but how much did they really catch us by surprise? Was it a rather predictable pedestrian type of pick in the history of their drafts, or did they really surprise some people?
Yeah. I mean, I think anything that happens now is going to be a surprise, because we've heard so many things, and I've never really believed it was going to be Mac Jones at number 3. And I've always felt like, they made this move for Justin Fields or the high upside player, or even Trey Lance. And we're hearing now that maybe there's still some talk between Trey Lance and Mac Jones in the building, hearing Kyle Shanahan talk about it and hear how Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch a little bit on the defensive about it, made me feel like, okay, they're already preparing for it. They already know that it's not the pick that the fans are really going to like, and it's going to be Mac Jones. And so up until, a couple of days ago, I really felt confident it was actually not going to be Mac Jones, and I've flipped on that. So I really feel like it's going to be Mac Jones. But as Lina mentioned earlier, there could be some trades in the works. There could be some fun things happening in the draft. John Lynch has already traded back just one spot twice as a GM. He did it in 2017, and he did it again last year. And so maybe they're throwing out the name of the player that they think the Falcons like behind him, trying to get that magic worked again, get one of their draft picks back, right? Recoup a little bit of draft capital, move back one spot, and then draft their guy that they're not talking about at all in Justin Fields. And if they're pulling that off, that's like some Kaiser Sose stuff. And I would commend them for doing that, because I definitely wouldn't see that coming, because it feels like it's pretty straight up going to be Mac Jones at this point at number 3. And to me, if it's not, then that'll be the surprise now. And the surprise to me the whole time was if it would have been Mac Jones. But I think I've come to grips with that, and listening to Kyle Shanahan talk and John Lynch at the press conference, really feels like Mac Jones is now going to be the pick. So the surprise to me would be Justin Fields. And I think maybe even a little bit more of a mild surprise in Trey Lance. But Trey Lance is a really fun player too, and he's really smart, and he has the upside, and maybe has something that Kyle Shanahan saw in his offense, in Trey Lance's college offense. So maybe that's sort of a halfway point between the two prospects. You've got upside, you've got a player who's worked under center, you got a guy who's really smart, and you have all the athleticism in the world. So maybe in the end, I have a feeling the scouting staff is trying to talk Kyle Shanahan into getting one of the higher upside players, like maybe Trey Lance instead of Mac Jones. And I guess they have still just a little bit more time to try to pull that off.
Yeah, and that was kind of my intrigue in the dynamic, even in listening to John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan address the media on Monday, is it almost seems as if John Lynch kind of dropped the keys in Kyle Shanahan's hands and said, go for it. This pick is yours. Do what you want. And now it's all kind of in Kyle's control. He is the head coach and he is the offensive play caller. So how much of that do you think is true, or how much of, I guess, input is really going on in those conversations of who could be leading this team next season?
Yeah, and they've never really said who's in charge, who has final say. And the job titles would lead you to believe it's John Lynch, but it's been clear to me, and even more so now with this whole saga this offseason and the 2021 draft, Kyle Shanahan's at the top of the heap, and he says, I want that, go get it for me. And John Lynch is the guy who goes and gets it for him. And it feels like that's absolutely the case. But I don't think Kyle Shanahan wants to be the GM either, and he doesn't want to have control over everything, but he wants to be able to say, look, I want that guy, so go get that guy. And then you do whatever you want in the fifth round, right? But I need you to go get me these guys. And we've seen it before with Dante Pettis. We saw it with CJ Beathard. We've seen it with Brandon Ayuk. Those are all clearly Kyle's guys in the draft. So I think that's sort of the dynamic, is Kyle gets what he wants, but he's also not overbearing with it, not trying to also be the GM and letting them do their work. And this decision absolutely is driven by Kyle Shanahan. I would love to know how they decided they needed to trade 3 draft picks to go up to number 3 so early. And that feels like more of a coach-driven move because they value draft picks less than the scouting department probably does. So most of it tells me that really it's Kyle Shanahan at the top of the pyramid. And John Lynch, while he's in control of the personnel side of things, if Kyle Shanahan wants something, John Lynch feels compelled to go get it.
Yeah, and the funny thing about that is too that giving away those picks almost makes me think that they may not go after that really bold move where all of a sudden they're going to try to make a play for Aaron Rodgers, as Cam Inman even kind of floated out there again today. And when Cam Inman floating it out there, like, that's my guy from the Mercury News. Like, I like, okay, there's some credence there. It's something that everyone has thought of. It's been in the back of everyone's mind. Would that shock just the entire franchise, or would it be something to where the fan base would go, no, we could see this coming?
Oh no, that would bring the house down. That would be pretty amazing. That would be a really fun twist to Thursday night if there was some massive trade like that and the 49ers were able to go out and pull off a trade like that and bring in Aaron Rodgers, who most 49ers fans believe should have been theirs this whole time since 2005 anyway. So that would be really fun, but I don't think it's in the cards. I've seen some other people think that maybe they could even be going for one of the best non-quarterbacks in the draft, someone like Kyle Pitts out of Florida, and go 2 tight ends and just wreck people because you can't cover them, and then we're going to block you and run down your throat all day as well. And it's just, I just don't see it happening. And I think they had to have this plan and know that, look, and part of the trade, I think, is that they were probably willing to do that. Might have made some calls to teams like the Houston Texans, to the Green Bay Packers, and say, how much would it cost? Is your quarterback actually available? Would you take 3 first-round picks for your quarterback? Because we've made the decision, we're giving away picks, so let's do it and get a veteran quarterback. And those teams hung up the phone, said no. So they said, okay, well, let's go to the draft and let's get the best quarterback we can. The highest we can go is pick number 3, and let's fall in love with the guy. And it sounds like they have fallen in love with maybe multiple guys, maybe just one guy. But yeah, we'll find out who that is Thursday.
Yeah, as we heard Kyle Shanahan say, they thought they had one guy, then they had 3, then they have 5, and ultimately it will be one chosen at number 3. So far, that's what we know coming up on Thursday. Brian, is there anything else that we are overlooking when it comes to the 49ers or just this draft in general? Obviously, this is the most, the sexiest situation, I guess, to talk about and cover, but is there anything else that's intriguing you leading up to Thursday?
Yeah, we already know where the 49ers are picking. They've already made their trade up. We know what the position is going to be, and we know it's between a couple of players. And I kind of have a feeling which one of those 3 players it's going to be. So there's more intrigue for me on day 2 of this draft. The 49ers pick at 43. They pick at 102. They have 3 fifth-round picks, and they've been very good at drafting in that round. That's where they drafted George Kittle, starter and Dre Greenlaw they found in the 5th round. So they do good work there. And I think Adam Peters, who's the head personnel guy there and assistant GM under under John Lynch deserves a ton of credit for the work he's done on day 2 and day 3 of the draft since they've been together in 2017. But I think corner, a cover guy, is really important for the 49ers and what they might do at 43 or potentially be on the move again. Could they sneak back into the first round and grab a cornerback that's falling a little bit? Could they maybe move up from that 102 pick and sort of close the gap from their late 3rd round pick closer to round 2 or earlier in round 3 to get a dynamic playmaking wide receiver or a corner there if they decide to go a different direction, pass rusher or wide receiver in round 2. But I think cornerback is really important for this team. I think that's what we'd probably be arguing about right now. If the 49ers didn't make this trade and we didn't know they were going to take a quarterback at 12, we'd be talking about, is it going to be JC Horn or Patrick Surtain, the pick at 12, the cornerback, because the 49ers need someone to compete now as a starter. They have Jason Verrett and K'Wan Williams on 1-year deals. The other starter, former undrafted free agent in Emmanuel Mosley on the other side. Those are the penciled in starters right now. They absolutely need depth currently. They need someone who could probably compete with Mosley to be a starter. Jason Verrett has an extensive injury history. K'Wan Williams has an injury history as well, not as extensive as Jason Verrett's. So they need talent in the secondary. They need cover guys. And we'll find out what kind of defensive scheme D'Amico Ryans, the new defensive coordinator, is going to be running with what style of corner they selected. They want more of a man, sticky corner, maybe smaller, more athletic type of a player. Do they want to stick with the more long, linear, long-armed outside corners in the Richard Sherman mold that they've had for the last few years? So future starters, very important at corner. I don't think it's a position they can ignore. And so I'm fascinated to see what kind of player they find at 43 and if they could potentially be on the move again, because they didn't have to give up any current picks this year in that trade up to number 3. So they still have a lot of ammunition, still have 9 draft picks to work with.
Brian Peacock, Locked On 49ers podcast. And what was the other one? You're all over the place.
Yeah. The Peacock and Williamson NFL show, daily show about the entire league. And my co-host, Matt Williamson there, you might have seen him, his work at ESPN, and he's an OG podcaster from way back in the day. There was a podcast, I think it was called NFL Today. And it was like the only football podcast at the time. It was like 10 years ago. So he's been doing this a long time, former college and pro scout, and he's my co-host there. And we're breaking down the entire league every day. So yeah, you can find me all over the place on the Locked On Podcast Network, doing the Locked On Today stuff, occasionally jumping on with Peter Bukowski. And it's fun, man. I love the network. There's so many great folks here, and every team is covered, every angle. It's fantastic. There's the draft guys, the draft dudes, and the Locked On NFL Draft crew as well. So if you are a podcast listener and a sports fan, there is a podcast for you on the Locked On Podcast Network.
And you're on record, Mac Jones now. That's the pick.
Yeah, Mac Jones. We'll see what the reaction is to that, but I think that's the direction it's going.
Well, we'll see. A lot can happen on Thursday, but there's a lot of intrigue and a lot of excitement, and we're going to be bringing you through it all. Of course, that is Brian Peacock with the Locked On 49ers podcast. ABC 10, Sean Cunningham and Lina Washington checking in with you, and we will get initial reaction to the number 3 pick on Thursday and bring you continuing coverage this weekend as the NFL draft takes over Cleveland.